we go. Okay, well, Chodesh Tov. Chodesh Tov. It's the new month, the month of Shvat. And I'm going to do talk about Rosh Chodesh, what Rosh Chodesh is, to the best of my knowledge, and some of the customs that we do, because in this week's Parsha, we get the mitzvah to bless the new month. That's the first mitzvah that we get, blessing of the new month. Why do we bless the new month? What exactly happened? At least as it's recorded in the Torah. So I thought it'd be apropos, it would be fitting to talk about it. This week's Parsha, towards the end of the Parsha, right before we give the Paschal offering. So what's happening over here? Today, we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk more about the Parsha. And in particular, we're about to leave. We're about to leave Egypt. The last three plagues are coming. And by the last plague, the slaying of the firstborn, God says to the Jewish people, stay inside your home and take for yourself a lamb, shech the lamb, slaughter the lamb, sprinkle the blood on the doorpost. I will pass over your house, and you will eat the lamb, and you will. Now, what exactly did they say? But I think they're recounting the story of what's going on outside. And that is the first Passover Seder, the first Pesach Seder that ever happened. Now, when God tells Moses to take the lamb, before he tells him, he says in 15 days, there's going to be a new moon, and you get blessed the new moon. It's called a Chodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodeshim. And Moses actually had a little bit of difficulty understanding when is the new moon. So what exactly happens? The moon disappears, right? The moon, you don't see it anymore. If you look outside tonight, well, really yesterday, you would have saw no moon. There would have been a moment of no light coming from the moon. And then the moon reappears, so to speak. There's a little bit of a dot. It's a moment when the sun hits the moon, and it's a little bit of a dot. And that's called Rosh Chodesh. There's a new month. Moses had a tough time knowing when exactly that was. And Hashem took him outside at night. God really only spoke to Moses during the daytime, during this period. He takes him out at night, talks to him at night, and says, it'll look like this. And he pointed up to the sky, when exactly what the moon will look like. And at that moment, that's called the new moon. And we bless the new moon. And there's a special connection with the moon, with women and whatnot. But let me just talk about quick little laws, and then I'll talk about a little bit more the history of what Rosh Chodesh was about. Some laws on Rosh Chodesh. Now, if you did any of these today, do not worry. Do not be discouraged. Totally fine. It's just, when you decide that you want to take on some of these laws and customs, you may do so. So on Rosh Chodesh, we don't cut our hair. We don't cut our nails. We try not to do laundry. If you did laundry, it's okay. Try not to do laundry. You try to have a little bit of a meal. That's not a law, but you have a little bit of a meal. Have a little bit of bread. If you ask me, did I have bread today? I did not have bread today. I had noodles and Parmesan cheese. I try to limit the carbs. I can't stop. Once I start eating bread, I can't stop. So I feel like I'm doing a service. We don't fast. The law is we don't fast. I'm not sure if we get married. I don't think we get married on Rosh Chodesh. You're supposed to get a haircut on the day you get married because you're like a king. A king gets a haircut every day. I'm talking about a man. And I don't think we get married on Rosh Chodesh. I don't know any of my friends that got married on Rosh Chodesh. I have to double check that. Why don't we do some of these things, and why do we do some of these things? Because in the Torah, it calls Rosh Chodesh a moed, a holiday. And on every holiday, there are certain laws, right? We bring extra sacrifices, and normally we don't do what's called malachot, certain creative works like turning on the lights and driving a car and writing, and all these other things. If you're not doing them yet, don't worry. Don't do everything at your own pace. But there are certain things we don't do, and that's called a moed. And Rosh Chodesh is called a moed, a holiday. But at the same time, it doesn't have the sanctity. It doesn't have the sanctity. We don't find the same stipulations or the same obligations. And whenever the Torah says it's a moed, it also says work shall not be done. It usually goes hand in hand. But by Rosh Chodesh, it doesn't say that. It just calls it a moed. So obviously there's something special about it. So we do extra things. What happens on Rosh Chodesh? We read the Torah today. We talked about in the Torah, we talk about the extra sacrifices that we would bring, the Rosh Chodesh sacrifice. And we recite Hallel. Hallel is something that we recite every holiday except for Purim and Rosh Hashanah, which are interesting. We simply should. Hallel is the extra prayer service that praises, it literally means praising. We praise God. And it's usually because of a holiday or some miraculous event that happened for us, collectively for the Jewish people. And so Hanukkah, we'll say Hallel. Now, sometimes we say what's called full Hallel, and sometimes we'll say half Hallel. Why? When's it full Hallel? When the Torah is explicit that this is a special day, the first 2 days of Passover, or the first day of Passover, if you live in Israel. Parenthetically, in Israel, holidays are 1 day. Outside the land of Israel, holidays are 2 days. Why the extra day? To remember the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple, to remember the land of Israel, and to remember that the months used to be established by witnesses. Very important, unique, something very unique. Nowadays, we have a fixed calendar. We know when Rosh Chodesh is going to be. We know how many days are in each month. But way back when, we would rely on witnesses, and it would be a whole event. 2 witnesses would come. Basically, what's the scene over here? The best seat in the house would be inside the Sanhedrin, the court of 71. So imagine you're inside the court. 2 people open up the door. They're wiping their face. Why are they wiping their face? Because they made a huge meal for anybody who would come to give testimony that they saw the new moon. They wanted to encourage people to come, and they would be praised, like, thank you for coming. I mean, it was a schlep, it was like usually they had to get on their horses and miss work. And it was like more reasons not to go than to go, especially if it was like the winter time, it was cold, or if it was very hot. So they would have like a major, you want to bring people to your shul, have a big kiddush, have a lot of food. It's the Chabad on campus. That's their biggest trick. A lot of food. It works very, very well. So when did that start? Started way back when. The heads of the courts, the rabbis, the leaders of the Jewish people knew that, and that's what they taught us that. So they would have a big meal. They would feed them and wine and dine them, and then they would come in, and then they would do what's called cross-examination. Now, what would they cross-examine them? They would say, what did it look like? Where did you see it? Where in the sky did you see it? What did it look like? Was the points, was the moon facing east and west, north and south? How much of the light was it? Where were you standing? Do you know which month it is? Do you know your name? Like, they would ask these these interesting questions to see if they're legit telling like proper testimony. The rabbis knew exactly when Rosh Chodesh was supposed to be. Let me take a little bit of a step back. There are 12 tribes. There were 12 tribes. 2 of the tribes worked with each other very well. Yisachar and Zevulun. Yisachar were those that learned Torah. It says that they would learn Torah. They sat in the ohel, they sat in the tents and learned Torah. They were very intelligent, and they worked very hard in learning Torah. And Zevulun, they lived on the coast. They both lived on the coast. Zevulun were merchants, and they would made a lot of money, and they would support the Torah scholars. And they worked hand in hand. They made like an agreement. They said, Zvulun said, or Yisachar said, we'll learn for your behalf, like you learn a little bit, but we'll if you pay us money, to sit and learn will share the reward, so to speak. And it's called Yisachar and Zevulun. It's a very common thing. Some people are Yisachar people, some people are Zevulun people. What made Yisachar people so smart, and what was it? What was so special about them? They were able to calculate when the moon set up the calendar. They were able to calculate when the new moon would be, when what's it called? When the moon moves in front of the sun, and vice versa. Eclipses and all these things. They were able to calculate exactly when that would take place, the exact moments. It's very complicated. If you learn in Maimonides, in Rambam, the laws of Kiddush HaChodesh, establishing the months, it's extremely complicated. We have the cycle of Rambam. Every day I read 3 chapters. When we get to that, the whole world who study, they just read it. We just read it. We don't even try to understand it. It's so complicated. Anyway, so the people in the Sanhedrin, the head courts, they knew exactly when the new month would be. And so they would hear the testimony. And if their testimony checked out, these 2 people, if their testimony checked out, they would declare Rosh Chodesh. Today is Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh. And then they would light, like in Lord of the Rings. Not that I saw Lord of the Rings. They would light on top of mountains. They would light a fire. You see it by the Great Wall of China. Yeah, there was like a bonfire pit, so to speak, and that was the way they sent a message. They would light the fire, and then the person at the other peak of the mountain would see the fire, and then they would light the fire, and so on and so forth. And it was a notification. They would do it all throughout the land of Israel, and it was a notification that everyone should know, that notifying everybody that it's Rosh Chodesh, and therefore there's a lot of significance to that. There's certain prayers that we say. And when is it most significant? So that we know when Rosh Hashanah is going to be, and Yom Kippur, and Pesach. What makes this so unique is that God doesn't tell us when the new month will be. We decide when the calendar, which day should be which day. We decide the calendar. And so therefore we decide when Rosh Hashanah is going to be, and when Yom Kippur is going to be, and when Pesach is going to be, and so on and so forth, which is an incredible thing, because especially if you learn Kabbalah and Chassidus, these holidays are moments of tremendous spiritual energy. Time works like in a spiral. Do you guys remember that? It's not linear. We'll get into that for Chassidus class, if we ever get back to Chassidus class. We decide when that energy will be drawn down. So it's a tremendous, it's an incredible thing. We're taking part in creation, and we take part into the amount of spiritual energy should come into the world, etc., etc. Now, what happens on Rosh Chodesh? So we bring extra sacrifices. There are certain laws we do. It's a holiday. It's a day of sanctification. We thank God we say Hallel. We say that what's called the half Hallel. I apologize. Say the half Hallel, which is an abridged version of Hallel. Why do we say not the full entire Hallel service? We only say a little bit, because although it's a holiday, it's a moed, it's not, it doesn't have the same level of sanctity as all the other holidays, like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Passover, Sukkot, right? We can still do work. So we say like an abridged version of it, to differentiate, to say like this is not a holiday, like a super special, super holy holiday. Let's see over here. I have like a little bit. The prayers are as bad. Yeah, so there's 4. We read from the Torah. Okay, it's connected to women, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Why is it connected to women? It waxes and wanes. It's a cycle. It's a new cycle every month, right? It starts over again. And same thing with the woman's body. There's the idea of life in renewal. In Judaism, we love that concept of renewal. And in the moon itself is very fascinating. The moon reflects the Jewish people. Why? Because the moon has no light of its own. It used to have its own light. It used to be its own source of light. And God said in the beginning of creation, this is right in Genesis, we can't have 2 great luminaries. People need to sleep. No, but we can't have 2 great luminaries. So I'm going to diminish one, but it will be. There will come a time where I'll be able to re-energize. You'll go back to your full glory and strength. There'll come a time where you come back to your full glory and strength. That's when Mashiach comes. What's unique about the moon is the moon doesn't have anything of its own. It reflects the light of the sun. Same thing with the Jewish people. We recognize that all the talents and everything that we have is not our own. We're not self-made people. Everything we're merely a reflection of God. B'tselem Elokim nasa Adam. We're a reflection of God, which is even more tremendous than if we were the sun, so to speak. Kabbalah explains that when you're an empty vessel, then anything can be filled up. And especially if the energy, you can be filled up with anything. And especially if the energy is the energy of God, it brings you to places that you can't reach on your own. And that's reflected like the moon. That's why we're called the moon. What's unique about the moon, another thing that's unique about the moon is that, first of all, why was it given to women? It was given to women because by the golden calf, the whole story of the golden calf, which we'll talk about in a couple of weeks, everybody threw in their gold for the golden calf. Yeah, they wanted to make the golden calf. What's the story? Moses went up to the mountain for 40 days. He said, I'll come back in 40 days. But they miscalculated, and they thought Moses was dead. And we'll get into the real details of that story. It doesn't really make sense what I'm saying. There's more details, but this is how it's in the simple way. And everybody threw in their gold to make the golden calf. Everyone was excited. But who didn't throw in their gold for the golden calf? The tribe of Levi, as usual, and the women. The women did not get involved in the golden calf. And then God said, I'm giving them their own special holiday. And their special holiday will be Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, women have they take on extra, they say usually extra tehillim. They don't do as many chores around the house, tedious chores around the house. Yeah, there's just a lot of connection with women.
Question.
Yeah.
So you said the tribe of Levi didn't participate in the golden calf?
Yeah.
But didn't Aaron essentially facilitate the whole thing?
Yeah, we'll get to that one. It's a very good question. Yeah, that's a classic question. He was trying to slow everything down. He was trying to take their gold and stuff and slow everything down. Right.
I see.
Yeah. But he failed miserably, and he was punished for that.
Yeah.
He got a punishment for that. A punishment. There was consequences to that. Some say that's why his sons died. Whatever. High level stuff. Very good question. Okay. What else happens on Rosh Chodesh? Okay. There's extra prayers that we say. There are things that we bring in. What did I want to tell you guys? Dun, 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 dun. We wish people a good month. Let me just get into this concept of renewal. What is unique about renewal? So we say every day, God, you recreate the world every moment. And Chassidus really loves that. God recreates the world. It's not like God created the world, classic understanding in Chassidus. God didn't create the world and take a step back, which is what most people kind of think. And God, he comes in, he intervenes once in a while. And when does he intervene? When there's a miracle. Yeah, it's like God pops in once in everything. All the other time, he's just standing there above and punishing people if they do something wrong. That's usually how we even think on a day-to-day basis. God only intervenes in my life when I do something wrong, which is obviously incredibly untrue. And if you remember from the Thursday night Talmud class 2 weeks ago, or was it last week or 2 weeks ago, when a person is putting themselves in a place of danger, they should be extra careful, because God, when you purposely put yourself in a place of danger, God decides whether to have added protection for you or not. So you got to be extra careful. You guys remember that? If you remember that, raise your hand. But God is obviously involved in every moment in our life. God actually recreates the world every moment, because the world by nature, creation, wants to not exist. This is very Chassidus. over here. The creation does not want to exist. It says God speaks the world into being every moment. The world, it's not God doesn't speak and the world continues to exist on its own. No, God has to constantly be saying what's called the 10 utterances, these 10 phrases, which is in Shari Chavei Amuna, the second part of Tanya. God is constantly saying these phrases that constantly bring the world into being every moment. The world is created within God's speech, his attribute of speech. What is speech? Speech reveals what you were thinking and what you're feeling, but it's also separate. It's also separate. So we feel a separateness, yet we're still created within godliness, so to speak. So we're still created, the world is within God's speech, so we're still created within God, but there's this attribute of separateness. That's why we feel separation, some sort of separateness. As opposed to, there are different parts of creation which are created within God's thoughts. Those are angels. There are angels, these malachim, angels, which are created within, they sense God much more because they're created within his thoughts. Think about your thoughts. Your thoughts are much more part of you, closer to you than your speech. When you tell me something, when you speak something to me, it reveals something about you. It reveals what you're thinking, but you're so much more than that. Think about what you're saying versus what you're thinking, what you're saying versus what you're feeling. It's like an infinitesimal amount compared to who you are, in your mind. And how much more so, it's how much even more infinitesimal is it compared to your essence and your these deeper parts of you, your supra subconscious levels. Okay, so God constantly is creating the world through the attribute of speech. Why does Chassidus like that? Because Chassidus takes every chance to remind us that there's a moment for renewal every moment. And not only is there a moment of renewal, there's a moment of, which is very hard to do. There's a moment of renewal every day. That's the Moda'ani prayer. And there's a moment, and there's renewal, a time of renewal every month. That's why Rosh Chodesh has such an emphasis. There's such an emphasis on Rosh Chodesh that you're able to become someone new. Don't think that you can't become someone new every moment, every day. And even if that's too hard for you to do, every month you have an opportunity to become a new person. Every month is connected to a different Shevet, a different tribe, one of Jacob's sons. The month of Shvat, which is the month that we're in, is connected to Joseph. Yeah, because the number of the month, which month it is connected to Joseph. Joseph was the ultimate fighter, the ultimate one involved in the world, dealing with all of the issues and complications of not only internally that he had to deal with. He had a lot of internal struggles, and the Torah is very descriptive when it comes to that. Yeah, he had very strong desires for material pleasures. He beautified himself. He wanted to sleep with a married woman. And then he had familial problems, obviously family problems. And then he had to deal with problems of a community and of a nation. And he had to deal with a boss. He had Pharaoh, and it was tremendous responsibility. And the fact that this month is connected to Joseph means that we're drawing from that spiritual energy, so to speak, whatever the spiritual quality of Joseph is infused in this month. So it's a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity to take advantage of and to use out. And I just want to say, I always say this, the concept of change. I've said this before, I think, because I think about it all the time. There was a kid in my school. His name was Oliver. And I knew him since, I don't know, third grade, fourth grade. He never spoke. I never heard him speak. Even when I had a project with him or whatever it was, and you had to talk, he kind of like shrugged. Now, clearly there was like some issue. He had something going on. And as a kid, you don't know. You're just like, why does this kid talk to me? No, he doesn't talk. Okay, whatever it was, whatever his issue was, he didn't talk. And it wasn't until 10th grade high school that I heard him talk. That's insane, but that's the truth. Or 9th grade, maybe. And I remember right before we were in a class, 9th grade, we had a class together and it was last day. And he was in my class. And then the summer, we went through a summer and we came back and he would not shut up. like he had so much energy and so much confidence. He was like getting in trouble in class. And I remember being shocked that he was a totally different person. Now, what kind of happened, I was able to see, you're a little bit older, you're a little bit more, I was able to recognize a little bit more that there was someone that he connected with very well in our class. And I don't know, just had like a good connection. And he probably felt very comfortable and and it changed him. But you'd think, I remember thinking this at the time, you would think, like, in the back of my mind, I was saying to myself, how come I'm not like, look at this freak, like now he talks like that. I treated him like a completely different person. He carried himself so different that it demanded respect. Now, I had no respect for him for 9 years or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden I had tremendous respect for him because he carried himself a certain way. And it all took place within a summer. And which was even more incredible that, I mean, it literally just came back and he was a completely different person. And I saw everybody treat him a different way. And I don't even think people realized how that they treated him differently. I don't know, for whatever reason, I just found it to be fascinating that I treated him differently. And I never had a moment of saying like, what a weird, like, I remember you being like a weirdo or whatever. It wasn't, I treated him like a very respectful person. And the idea being, and I think it fits very well with the concept in Torah, that is a very famous line, that when the spies came back from their report of the land of Israel, which we'll read about in 5 or 6 weeks, they came back with a bad report saying, we can't conquer the land of Israel, right? They said to Moses, we want to go conquer the land of Israel. Moses said, we're going to go into the land of Israel. And they said, let's go check it out first. Let's go scout the land. Call them the scouts, the 12 scouts. And 10 of them came back with a bad report. And they said, because we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes, so we were to the inhabitants of the land. They saw these giants, and they said, they saw these giants and said, we can't beat them. But what did they say when they came back to Moses? What they should have said was, they were huge and we were like grasshoppers in their eyes. We can't beat them. We're like little grasshoppers in front of their eyes. But that's not what they said. The Torah records it as, we were grasshoppers in our own eyes. And so therefore, that's how we were in their eyes. The Torah is saying, however you carry, if you look at yourself like a grasshopper, you'll be a grasshopper. But if you look at yourself like a giant, you'll be a giant. You'll be a giant to other people. I'm sure Napoleon, who was 4'5", you walked in, he demanded like people, he had a command. God is saying, however you view yourself, that's how other people are going to view you. And you don't have to wait, says the Torah, says Chassidus, you don't have to wait for some event to happen. It can happen every moment. And if you can't, it can happen within a moment. And not only can happen with a moment, it can happen with every day. You should try to do it every day. And if you can't do it every day, for sure, try to do it on Rosh Chodesh. Take the process to become a new person. You can become a brand new person. And I just remember Oliver, my friend Oliver, I guess maybe my friend, not sure he would consider me a friend, but I was so impressed that he became a new person instantly because he looked at himself a different way everybody else did. It's a tremendous opportunity to take advantage of Rosh Chodesh. It's a month of Geula. It's a month of redemption, a month of blessings and brachas. We have Tu B'Av, holiday where the sap, where the trees begin to regrow. According to some opinions, the Tekufa of winter, the season of winter, ends today. Now, if you live in America, February is always the worst month, but nevertheless, on some level, winter ends today. We have Tu B'Av, and we have Yud Shvat, which is the day that the Rebbe took over as the leader of Klal Yisrael, of the Jewish people. Tremendous amount of blessings. Tu B'Shvat. Yeah, Tu B'Shvat. The 15th of Shvat. And my birthday is on Thursday, so obviously tremendous amount of blessings. Okay, so anyway, you should really take advantage. I give you all a blessing that we should take advantage. We should all take advantage, myself included. I'm really just talking to myself. And I hope to see you guys tonight for the weekly roundup. If you have any questions, let me know.
Your birthday is this Thursday?
My birthday is this Thursday, yes. Dal Shvat. It's the yard side of the Baba Sali. My birthday is on the yard side, on the anniversary of passing of the Baba Sali. So if you guys are Sephardic, you should know about that. Yeah.
Okay, Mazel Tov.
Thanks. It didn't happen yet. Don't give me any praises yet.
Okay.
Rosh Chodesh Shvat, by the way, is also this is when Moses, the last 37 days of his life. He said the entire book of Devarim takes place today. Starts Rosh Chodesh Shvat. 37 days from now would be with the day that Moses passed away, Zayin Adar, the 7th of Adar. However, this year we have two others. We have an extra month. Maybe we'll talk about that when Adar comes. So we have double the possibility of joy this year. Anyway, should have a lot of blessings. And we'll see you tonight, everybody. Sei gesund.